for the Ohio Together campaign, which is the campaign that is working to elect Hillary Clinton and Democrats up and down the ticket. I'm also the proud daughter of a big military family. Both of my parents are now retired Air Force. They spent 27 years. I was born in Nebraska at Offutt Air Force Base. We moved to Japan, to New Mexico, to Virginia. So I've had the opportunity to kind of travel, see a lot of things, and it's been a great experience. Growing up, moving was hard, having to make new friends was hard, but in my experience, I've met a lot of people who never moved outside kind of the 15-mile radius that they were born in. So being in the military has given me such a great opportunity to see different cultures, meet interesting people, and really understand our place in the world. And I think that's what has made this choice in this election really clear for me. Donald Trump, he doesn't respect the military, he doesn't respect our families, he's not fighting for us. He doesn't understand the importance of our international community and working with our allies. However, Hillary Clinton, she's the candidate. She understands, she knows how important our place in the world is, how important our military is, and she is fighting for me, for families like mine, and for families like yours. And so you guys are all aware that we have a really great opportunity here in Ohio to make sure that we are volunteering, that we're getting out to vote. Voting starts in 20 days. In 20 days, people start voting every hour, well, 8 to 5 for another hour. People are voting. So it is on us to make sure that when those people vote, they are voting for Hillary, and they are actually turning out to vote. So we've got 20 days till voting starts, 47 days until election day. That is 7 weeks from now. So we're asking for you guys to give us an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, once a week. That's 7 days. If you guys can give us 7 days in the next 7 weeks to make sure that Hillary Clinton is our next president. First Lieutenant Nathaniel Dayton.
For those lovely introductions. Thank you all for being here. I got to meet the panel a little tiny bit backstage, and we're in for a great discussion. We've got some really remarkable folks here, and I'm so eager to hear them share their experiences, so I won't talk long. I will just say briefly, Charlie deployment is in a peacetime part of the world. At least we hope it stays a peacetime part of the world, and so we're very proud of his service, but he always wants me to point out the distinction between his service and those who have served in some very, very difficult circumstances, like the family members and Mark here. I am very, very proud and humbled to be with my husband joining this remarkable leader, Hillary Clinton, who's going to be the next great president of our United States. You know, Virginia, we are, well, like this community here, we are a very military friendly and military full state. We have a very significant military presence throughout Virginia and significant veterans presence. So we understand the importance of issues like sequestration, like making the VA work for everybody, like taking care of our military families. As in my Secretary of Education role, I had the opportunity to work on a number of issues relating to how we make our schools more hospitable to military families, how we help actually get more teachers hired, helping address our teacher shortage needs by getting both vets and military family members, smoothing the process to get them into the classroom, how we help vets transition successfully to the civilian workforce. Those are issues that my husband has worked on as well at the national level, and that Secretary Clinton has worked on both in her, most particularly in her time as a senator, on the, have worked on a number of armed services issues and got some very, very important results for military families during her time there. She's laid out some great policies that I think will be strongly beneficial to these communities, and we can talk about them more as the day goes on. With that, I think I'll stop, and as I say, I'm so looking forward to hearing from these other panel members, as I know you are too. I've told them, by the way, that what Hillary has asked me to do on the campaign trail, and it's been such an honor, is to listen and bring feedback back. So this doesn't have, I've invited them, this doesn't have to be all about everything that's working. It can be what's working and what's not, and what are your suggestions, how can we fix things?
My name is Ida Carson, and I am the mother slash caregiver for my son, who's a retired staff sergeant, and his name is Rodney James Ridgway. Rodney served 4 tours, 1 in Afghanistan and 3 in Iraq, and has recently come back, I guess about 5 years now, and he deals with post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain disorder, as well as some other issues. He has shrapnel throughout his body, and he's been in a semi-explosion. So I'm just so grateful to be able to be his spokesperson slash Madam President to make some changes to the VA system. One of the things, if you're familiar with the VA system concerning the veterans, is their wait time. Where they're not being seen in the emergency room. One of which it could be also getting their appointments, getting the proper medication. Those simple things, you know, it may be small, but for someone with post-traumatic stress disorder who served 4 tours, that's almost 4 years, like going to college, and you know, all he wants to do is get help. Right now, Rodney is one that, if you look at him, you couldn't see his injuries. However, I have to be at his appointments when he's at the VA. I have to be when he goes into his meetings because of the post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'm just looking forward. I got involved in this campaign because I do believe in Hillary and Tim McCain and what they can bring to the current system, because the system is broken. I know it's not perfect, but for other veterans who don't have an advocate, who don't have someone standing up for them, that's where I want to see some change, and I'm looking forward to this campaign. And I just encourage everybody to go out and make Ohio happen, especially for our veterans who can't speak up for themselves. So that's a little bit about my situation, and I'm just grateful. One of the things that my son came home, one of his last visits back home, my late husband he was going through chemo and cancer, and he came right before my late husband passed, and he got to see him before he passed, and that was one of the hardest things for myself and Rodney as coming back, and he could not go back again. So I just encourage everyone to get involved and make this Ohio stand out. Thank you.
And families to be able to talk and be able to share our experiences and our opinions for people like yourself, who we can hope that will be in a position of great influence. And in fact, you already are, of course, so it's a real pleasure. My name is Mark Fogel. I grew up here in Dayton, graduate of Centerville High School, and then went to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. Very fortunate, wonderful place, and I was lucky to get selected for flight school, where I flew F-15s in the Air Force for 12 years as a pilot and instructor pilot, and one fairly short 7-month tour in Afghanistan, and that is short by the standards of many folks that do go overseas. We all have friends and family that have spent sometimes 14, 16 months, if not going back for multiple tours, like the mothers have seen up here on stage. In the 7 months I was flying a small aircraft that provided friendly force overwatch, protecting our own troops as well as Afghan civilians. I'm proud to say that my team, not me, but my team found 2 roadside bombs. We were able to disarm those before they caused any casualties. So that's the kind of good work that people are doing every day, to this day, in both Iraq and Afghanistan. After getting home to the United States, back a few years ago, I decided to get out of the Air Force and went back to school. and it was a policy that we have heard of many times, the post 9/11 GI Bill, and it was because of that type of public policy allowed me and my family to go back and get a master's degree and continue to find a way to dedicate myself to service. Just got back here to Dayton in June and joined a local nonprofit that works on bringing jobs to the area. So that's my short story. I would say that just to kind of start off, my quick little thought is I would be remiss if I left here and didn't say that the number one thing that we can do as a society for our veterans and families is A, to make sure that we fund and equip them to win any war, and then B, to only send them to war when it's an absolute necessity for the American people. I had talked about the VA healthcare system and just healthcare in general. That's obviously a major issue. And I've been very fortunate to have a wife and 3 kids now that are under 2. I don't recommend it. The VA for me and my healthcare was a very positive experience. So I have seen what can happen when you are in a position to see the positive effects of a good program. But that's not the story that everyone has. That's not everyone's story. We need to make sure that we tackle the problems of the VA head on. It's not time to switch gears and do something crazy like privatize it. Let's put the money and the attention, the energy back into making sure that the VA system continues to live up to its ideal. And I think that's the right move forward, in my opinion. There is, other than healthcare and kind of that philosophical idea of when we go to war as a country, there are smaller kind of, I would say, almost niche items that I think don't get a lot of attention. For one, survivors benefits continues to be something that is being struggled to get passed in Congress. And it's a bipartisan issue, but we have surviving spouses, widows, by last count over 60,000, that have received letters from the Department of Defense saying, we're sorry, there's been a mistake. You're not entitled to the benefits that you thought you were. And in some cases, wages have been garnished for that. And if there's any group of veterans families that need that kind of attention and care, it's surviving spouses. So that's an issue that I think just needs to be elevated to the forefront. It's also fair to say, and I should mention this up front, that at the end of the day, every veteran and any individual man or woman who's worn the uniform knows that it's the spouse. The spouses are the ones who sacrifice the most. Right. And whether your husband or your wife, son or daughter is overseas, like yours is right now, it's the spouses back home that can struggle. So every policy that we need to pass and look at always now needs to take account what it's going to do for the families. So again, we need to focus on that. So that's me, and that's the things that I would say off the cuff, and I really appreciate you taking the time and talking with us today.
Was waiting for the bus for basic training when the towers for 9/11 came down. The towers on 9/11 came down. So his whole military career has been shaped by 9/11. And he ultimately, he was in infantry. He ultimately became a person in special forces. He's a sniper. And he is now in the reserves. He's a sergeant first class. His wife is now first lieutenant in the Army Reserves. She has not seen combat, however. My son Ben's story is really very common, unfortunately, and really he had several close calls in Iraq, and he won a Purple Heart, and he came very close to dying 3 times. He was in the Mosul lunch tent bombing, if any of you remember that, and everyone around him died. He was 75 feet from the blast, and there's no good reason, logical reason why he's still with us. And he carried bodies out that day. He came out looking in pretty good shape, but as he's aged, all sorts of problems have started to manifest themselves. He was subject to those toxic burns, and so now he has locum problems. The blast affected his hearing, and it's been deteriorating over time. He's got a terrible post-traumatic stress disorder. His knees and back are going. He's just generally deteriorating, and he's also deteriorating mentally. He has terrible post-traumatic stress disorder. he tried to get help from the VA, and he's one of those people who just kept getting turned away. And eventually he had 2 explosive PTS episodes, which has jeopardized his 3rd marriage. He's been through 3 wives since joining the Army. And they finally hospitalized him. Now they're talking about giving him a medical discharge, which sounds good, except all my son's ever wanted to do since he was 3 years old is, be in the Army. This is not what I wanted him to do, right? This is what he wanted to do. So I supported him. And he just feels that the Army has abandoned him now. And he doesn't do well on jobs. And here's one of the main reasons he doesn't do well on jobs. My son is a sergeant first class, and all he's found since he's gotten back are minimum wage jobs. And he works under, 20-year-olds, and he's quite older now, and who don't really know what they're doing, and eventually can't stand it, and he leaves, or they ask him to leave. And see him, he got in terrible trouble for this. He said, has really started to work with the VA and improve this. I think he inherited a mess, and I think he's done a marvelous job, and I think that job needs to continue. I'm supporting Hillary for a lot of reasons. I've been a Hillary booster since 1992 when she came on my radar as First Lady. But one of the most important things for me is how I see Republicans send our sons and daughters to war with insufficient equipment and supplies. I send a box every week to my son and his comrades. And then they cut the Army back, and they cut because of the sequester, and then they cut, he has terrible benefits, and he can't access the few he has, and he's very, very frustrated, and I'm frustrated with him. And I believe that Hillary Clinton is an outstanding person. I trust her. I have just recently gotten to learn about Tim Kaine, and I was fortunate to meet both of them in a 2-week period, and they're the real deal. I want to tell you, they're the real deal. When you're up close and personal, wow, they have tremendous energy, compassion, care. Tim says, "Oh, I'm Tim. I'm not Senator Kaine. I'm Tim, right? She's Hillary." And when they shake your hand, the warmth just really comes at you, and they peer into your eyes. I mean, you're being heard. And I'm bewildered by people who don't trust her. I think this has been a Republican smear campaign that's gone on for decades. I know that Hillary and Tim have tremendous experience. Tim and Judge Holton, Secretary Holton have a military son. They know what it is to be concerned about having a son in the military. My son was very upset that I worried, and I'm Special Forces. I can take care of myself. I said, I know that, but do you really want a mother who doesn't worry about her son in a war zone? What kind of mother is that? So yes, I worry about him, and I just think she's going to be a really tough commander-in-chief. She's got the experience, and I'll tell you, she's tough. Tough. I would have crumbled long ago. I'm also an attorney and a legal scholar, and I've been in some tough situations. And I'll tell you what, under what she's under, I would have crumbled a long time ago. She's tough, and she can handle guys like Putin. I really trust Hillary. I trust Tim. I don't trust Trump. Now, he will send my son back to war if my son is lucky enough to stay in the Army, and it will be a nuclear war. I don't like how Trump insults the military. I don't like how he doesn't understand modern warfare. He keeps talking about, Patton and MacArthur and World War II. We don't have a front to like that. It's just a totally different type of war that we're under, and it's technological and digital. And he's not willing to learn. He's not going to learn anything. Nobody can teach him. He's unteachable. And as a legal scholar and professor, I got to tell you, you can't stand people who aren't teachable. I mean, you know, everybody's gifts have different gifts and graces, right? If they're not too sharp, fine. But if they don't work, I'm not a happy camper. And Trump doesn't do his homework. And I just think he'll be the worst possible commander-in-chief. I mean, you know, I disagreed with the policies of McCain and Romney, but I actually trusted that they could lead. You know, I may not like their attitude, but I didn't on policies, but I actually trusted them as people and their governing abilities. I have no confidence in Donald Trump, the Donald. And frankly, I have to say that in my closing remarks, I just want to say that as Trump continues to campaign, I just think he gets worse and worse. And I'm now at a point where I don't sleep at night. I mean, I wake up spontaneously with anxiety over where this could take our country. And I'm working hard, and I hope all of you volunteer as well, on the campaign to deliver Ohio, especially Montgomery County, which is a swing county in a swing state. So as Montgomery County goes, so goes Ohio, and as Ohio goes, so goes the nation. We are so important, and I want to encourage each and every one of you to give as much time as possible to this campaign. And I believe with our assistance that we will deliver Ohio, and Hillary and Tim will win the day and do great things for our country.
For Ann and for our panelists, so I'm going to read off a few of those. The first question is, how will Hillary and Tim strengthen Social Security and Medicare?
Strengthen Social Security. It is a bulwark of our nation. You know, that we take care of and when seniors had no protection against poverty and lived in dire circumstances, and we now do have a system that we all pay into, and we absolutely need to protect it, expand it, and strengthen it. Medicare as well. You all know that there are funding challenges, and that we do need to make adjustments to Medicare so that we can protect the core benefits, Medicare especially. And Tim and Hillary have very practical, concrete plans. That's one of the great things about Hillary, is you don't have to guess at what she'll do. You can go to her HillaryClinton.com and see her plans laid out in great detail, and they're all concrete plans, and she's put forth how she's going to pay for all of them as well. So she will protect Social Security and Medicare. On one related thing, I'd love to just say in response to some of the things Mark in particular said. One of the things, well, and Rachel, one way to know how to trust somebody is not just what do they say, but what have they done already? How have they acted? Hillary has fought on these issues successfully over the years, including had got some important legislation passion to get past the largest new investment in education, K-12 and higher ed in a long, long time, beginning to right that the challenge of the funding gap. And Hillary understands that one of our top priorities needs to be to figure out how do we elevate and modernize the teaching profession, and part of that's got to include resources.
Yes.
Is what policies are you most passionate about, and how will you translate these policy initiatives once you're in DC?
I think that education, public education, and I'm a proud, so my long history, I don't think Jolly gave you my long history, and I'll give you the short version of it, but I grew up in a political family. My dad was the first Republican governor of Virginia in 100 years. This was in a day when the Southern Democrats, Dixiecrats, were helping lead massive resistance. And so Dad won and ran on one and governed on a premise of helping bring racial reconciliation to Virginia, helping us make Virginia a model of race relations. And we had an opportunity early on in his term as children, I was 12 at the time, to help integrate our local Richmond City schools, which was, all we did was go to school. I went to the school I was assigned to as a 12-year-old and made friends and worried about math homework. But it was kind of it was a bigger deal than that might sound at the time because of prior Southern governors having led massive resistance, and we instead, when my parents took us children to these formerly all African American schools, it made the national and international press really, and gave us a taste of being part of something bigger than ourselves, and also made me a passionate fan of public education from an early age. My children went to those same inner city schools, got great education, including great arts and music education. How about that in the public schools? Very, very proud of our local schools. So I'm sure that, I hope that my platforms, what I will do is what I can to help Hillary in whatever, and Tim in whatever way they ask me to, but my platforms will certainly include education, and as I say, a lot of what she's asked me to do on the campaign trail is listen, especially to teachers, and so I would love to be taking that input back to Washington. So can I jump in and ask these panel members, you've talked a little bit in your remarks so far, but I'd love to hear more about, what do you want me to take back to Hillary about how we can, what do we need to do to help, do you have concrete suggestions on what we need to do with the VA or otherwise on supporting military families? What are some of the top button issues you want her to be addressing?
He prefers our VA hospital to Dayton to the local private hospital because other veterans are there with him. And because they are special qualified people like the social worker who takes the time to talk to Rodney, listen, and access him so she can give us referrals, counseling, doctors for special needs, and she has helped him in navigating the VA disability and financial assistance programs. Rodney and I go to the VA 4 to 5 times a week, and on a monthly basis we go to a support group. So the attention to the VA is needed in advance. That will help work and to improve what it needs. I do have faith that under President Hillary Rodham Clinton, VA facilities will reduce wait time in the ERs, increase services for the PTSD and TBI. I am confident that Hillary Clinton understands situations we've seen where an ER doctor doesn't treat post-traumatic stress disorder and TBI with medications needed. So veterans end up on the 7th floor mental ward. And she knows that that's one of the issues that I want to be improved for the lives of the wounded veterans. That will not honor the nation's commitment to them, but in turn will improve the lives of their children and their families and better their communities. I trust Hillary Clinton. She has the experience to get the job done. She finishes what she starts and does not quit, much like my son.
I got it. Don't privatize the VA, but fix it so that some young people like Rodney get the help they need. And it is true that the VA really is the specialist in so many of, and not just PTSD, but many of the illnesses and injuries that have the VA does have that expertise, and I hear that a lot, that when we can break through the bureaucracy, we do get the treatment we need, but the bureaucracy is the problem. And I appreciate your comments that we're already making some progress on it, but we've got a lot more work to do, and Hillary's ready to do it. Thank you.
And Rodney is 36. I didn't want to leave out his age.
I call that young still.
Thank you. That's me. It's all right. Especially for veterans. Rachel, talking about your son coming back from the Army and hurt on a lot of levels, but for one, having been a leader of young troops, especially the enlisted folks, the type of people who wear the uniform are amazing people. What they've done in the Army has positioned them to be fantastic contributors to society. And whether that's on the workroom, the factory floor, the boardroom, these are elite people. And when someone like that comes back after serving the Army, they should be able to roll right into just about any corporation in America and been given a job. A lot of times you'll see websites from companies that say, we're very veteran friendly. There's links of, click on here, and that link will say, we support veterans, and that's the end of it. There are some, I think, gold standards right here in the Dayton area, places like GE, Waste Management. They do a great job with hiring veterans, and that comes down to the type of leaders in those companies, but also engagement. from our elected, appointed officials to engage with industry and make sure that they understand the caliber of people that are separating and retiring from the military. And then education-wise, things like that, again, like I talked about from a personal experience, the post 9/11 GI Bill, to be able to, and I'm a lucky one, and it's the post 9/11 GI Bill and those types of policies that will let them go to college or vocational schools so they can get a job. And those are important.
Too modest. If I remember reading correctly, you went to Harvard's Kennedy School of Government for your master's.
I did,
This
yeah.
isn't just any master's. So Dayton is very, very lucky to have you back here working on job development here.
Well, thank you, but that would only have been possible through the post 9/11 GI Bill.
Yeah.
It's an expensive school, and still took out loans. So I mean, things like the Stafford loans. Again, our public policy that allows people the opportunity to elevate themselves. And again, I'm the lucky one. There are many, many thousands more who they just want a foot in the door here at Sinclair or at Ohio State, and these kind of policies will let them do that.
And Hillary has worked and will continue to work to strengthen GI benefits for family members as well. My husband has worked on something that I want, and I in my role as Secretary of Education in Virginia, worked on issues relevant to what you and Rachel talked about how, yes, our veterans have so many amazing skills, but sometimes those skills don't translate easily, at least on a resume, to the civilian workforce. And Tim was very proud of helping get a bill passed and in law called the Troop Talent Act that helps get military credentials translate more easily to civilian credentials, particularly in some of the technical fields. That sometimes you've got, you know how to be an electrician, but you may not have an electrician license that translates into the civilian world. So that's a really important thing we can do to help smooth pathways. And then we absolutely need to be working with our vets more effectively. And I think we've made some strides, but we've got a long ways to go. In Virginia, our community colleges are a real source of connecting with our veteran communities and helping translate on into jobs immediately and or onto translating onto four-year colleges. We had some programs where cybersecurity is one in Virginia where we've got tons and tons of jobs that can't be filled and have a hard time coming up with that pipeline. And then we've got folks who've been doing work very like that in the military, but don't necessarily have the civilian credentials, or even if they haven't been doing that work, they've already got the security clearance part of it down, right? So if we can get them the technical skills, and we've worked hard, and it's time consuming to translate and map the actual training and the skill sets into the civilian credit process and then on into jobs. It just takes hard work. It's rolling up your sleeves and doing the hard work. But we're taking some steps on it already in many states, and we're excited to do that nationwide. Rachel?
Underline everything that has already been said. One of the things that I felt, vehicles that weren't armored under George W. Bush, he didn't have socks. His toothbrush was constantly full of sand, so I sent him disposable pre-toothpaste toothbrushes. He needed Listerine, and I mean, I was constantly sending very basic kinds of things. I would put a box up where I worked and ask people to contribute. They didn't have soap. I mean, it was really outrageous. And now they have less supplies. So I don't know how Trump thinks that we can win anything when our soldiers are not fully equipped and they're not adequately protected. We didn't have enough Kevlar vests at the beginning. It was a disaster. And my son was out in the middle of this for 4 years. Very distressing, and so I think we really need, I mean, if we're going to have a military, then we need to really be behind our military. I grew up in the Vietnam War, right? Gulf of Tonkin was when I was 11, the draft ended when I was 18, and so I was really shaped by the experience of veterans then. It was poor, and we're doing a better job supporting our veterans now. But not financially, not with jobs, not with adequate VA care. All of these things need to be stepped up. And I hold Congress, the dysfunction of Congress, the Republican majority, completely responsible for this mess. And I want to see, and I said earlier, I think Obama's done amazing, amazing things. Very proud of our president. You can tell I'm emotional. I cried on election night. I couldn't believe we'd done it. We elected a Democrat and we elected our first African American president, and I want to elect our first female president and have that touch in the White House, just like we had the African American experience in the White House. And I think that's really changed us for the better. And I believe in you know, we're stronger together.
Now on the upcoming round of sequestration, which does, I mean, I've seen it when my son was early in his service, was the first round of sequestration cuts, and it really does make a difference to have a nephew who's the same level as entered the service same time as my son in the Navy, and really did feel those cuts down at the front line, and to know that we've got another round of that coming potentially, and Democrats are our stalwart on that, and we do need to elect more Democrats in Congress as well as Hillary, so we have more stalwarts on that, and you all have a great opportunity to elect former Governor Strickland as your next senator. So we need to do that, pull that off too, right? That is something that requires people to reach across, though, and get things done in a bipartisan way, and the leadership on our side are the right folks to make it happen and make sure we're protecting our military. The other thing that makes me so proud and ready to have Hillary is that she does get that we need to be strong, and we also need to build our alliances, that it's not all about military strength. It is about working with folks around the world so that our military is our last resort, not our first resort. And her experience as Secretary of State, building relationships around the world instead of trashing alliances. You know, my son's work in the deployment he's on is in support of our NATO alliances, and hearing other folks trash the NATO alliance, one of the fundamental alliances that's helped strengthen our nation around the world, it's just mind-boggling. And with that, I'll just end that thought with saying I'm ready to trust Hillary with my life, my son's life, and your young people's lives. We can't afford to have somebody else in that role.
And Hillary, as I said earlier, is tough, and she can stand up to him. When she said at the Democratic National Convention that her mother made her go outside and stand up to bullies, she can stand up to bullies. She can stand up to Trump. She can stand up to Putin. And I love it. I love it.
Voting starts 20 days until people are going out and casting their ballots in this election. And we have to win it. We have to win it here in Montgomery County. We have to win it here in Ohio. And we've got to win this election. And so we have a few of us. I will be out. Jesse, who is the regional organizing director here. Some of the organizers are on the other side of these blue cloths here to sign you guys up for your volunteerships. So we're really excited that you guys are going to be here joining us on the campaign. And thank you for joining us today for our panel.
Thank you, panel. Your system is just great. Weren't they amazing? Thank you, panel. It's great to meet you.
also to please, how can I reach to you? How can I reach to you? What is the method to reach you? You want to send something to me? Yeah, I'll get my staff here. I want my rights back. I cannot even communicate with my children in the United States. I hate to. What's your name? Kate.
Smile. Beautiful, 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 beautiful.
Thank you. With you all's help. With you all's help.
Just one quick one here. Smile, look at me. There you go. You go, man.
I agree. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
man.
I'll pass that on. Oh, yes. Great.
Got it? Yeah.
Yeah, Harrison. Yeah, good. Yeah. Come